Be good now if you want to check.
Yeah. Testing. Yeah, we're good. Okay, excellent. So, welcome back to another episode of the Counterculture Podcast. On this week's episode, well, we were right, guys. We were always right.
Man, love that intro.
Yeah, it never gets old. It never gets old. Shout out to Michael for putting that together.
Shout out to Michael.
Like the episode of the Counterculture Podcast, I'm your host Christian, along with my great friend and co-host
What's
Taylor. And well, first, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty good, man. Could be watching the Stros right now in the World Series, but we'll get to that.
Oh man, we almost
There was talk, yeah.
There was talk of us actually putting the Stros game on the monitor we have in here while trying to record. But I don't think much should be said, to be honest.
Yeah, if you would have seen my eyes like up there the whole time, and then Mr. Focused over here, I actually probably wouldn't have talked as much as usual. So.
Oh, no, absolutely not, because I'm not. I like baseball. I like playoff baseball because it's there's like it's intense. Like everything matters, right? Every at bat, every pitch, right?
Because that's the thing with baseball during the regular season. There's like 200 games.
Yeah, it's too much.
It's
too much. I can't watch regular season baseball. Like I watch like the opening day, maybe a little bit after that, but then I'm like, okay, I'll see you in October because I don't care that much to watch baseball.
It's all about the playoffs.
Yeah, it is. And at this point now, since being World Series champs in 2017, the expectation is we get to the playoffs and a shot at the World Series. So, for all those if you're a Astros hater, well,
the Astros. A lot
whatever.
of people give the Astros a lot of heat.
There's a lot of hate.
Listen, everybody was doing it. Okay, we just
you just got caught.
Yeah.
And honestly, I like being the villain though. It's kind of fun. You know what I mean?
It is.
Like it's.
What's the quote? You either live long enough to see yourself become a villain,
or you die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. From what was that? From the Dark Knight?
Yeah.
And we've lived long enough to see ourselves become the villain in the baseball world, and that's okay. I'm totally cool with that.
Man, I know we're ranting, but it's relevant. But the commentators, man, have you been listening? They are obsessed with like the Phillies. The Astros get no love.
Here's the thing, right? It's the same thing with everything. Is that when it comes to sport, especially baseball, because it is, although it's still America's pastime, I think it's lost its place in popularity when it comes to the average American, and they thrive on large regional or national brands, and like Houston is a super regional market. Like if you're not in Houston, you basically don't care about the Astros.
Right.
There are some people like outside of Houston that do, but basically it's Houston that cares, right? For Philly, it's still pretty small. But it's a larger region, being there on the East Coast because you have like Delaware, Jersey right there, all that kind of stuff, right? But these commentators would beg to have like a Yankees Dodgers World Series because they're national brands that are recognizable.
Yeah. The Yankees had their chance and they lost.
Yeah, they had their chance. Yeah, and they got pooped on again
by yours truly.
Mm-hmm. Well, not us, by the Astros. But,
I don't know. I was there. Maybe.
Well, I was there for the first game.
That's right, you were.
Yes,
Lucky.
we were. It was awesome.
Have you seen tickets right now for the World? Like nosebleeds are like $650.
Oh yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, I don't know how people.
Well, you can go view the game. They have the watch parties at the stadium for $1 a ticket.
Yeah, that would be cool. Actually, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I would think about doing that maybe next year. It's too late now because now it's coming back to Houston. But anyway.
Enough about that.
Before we get into today's episode, which is going to be a fun one, I would, the old saying, right? Is that I don't want to say I told you so,
but
sometimes I do. This one, it's very bittersweet. This sort of I told you so, kind of the things we're going to talk about today, because it negatively affects a lot of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, but anyway, but before we get into it, make sure you like and subscribe, right? Hit the notification bell. And now we have an official handle on YouTube. It's at the Counterculture Podcast. So you can do YouTube / at the,
Interesting.
at Counterculture.
Did we not have one before? You have to
well, no, YouTube is starting to do handles. I almost dropped my phone there. It's starting to do like handles like Twitter and everything else. So we have ours. It's at the Counterculture Podcast. I don't know if that really makes a difference, honestly, when it comes to look up on YouTube, because you just can use the same URL. But then make sure you go on Instagram at the at Counterculture Cast, where you can see the memes we like to post and keep up with stuff about recording and all that kind of good stuff. So, yeah, man. This week the last couple weeks have been crazy because obviously we took some time off for Brittany having the baby. We had Rebecca on last week, which if you haven't gone and watched that show, please go and check that out. It was so much fun. Rebecca's awesome.
It's always good.
Yeah, I mean, talking to Rebecca is always great. And that was just.
I don't think we've had a bad guest.
Oh no, I think all of our guests have been fantastic. But I mean, I'm also, it's my show, so of course I think it's great.
Right.
But no, it is, and I look forward to having more guests on regularly. It's been cool to see, actually, really just again our show just kind of morph and evolve over the year and a half, I guess now, or a year and a few months that we've been doing this. Dude,
it's been a minute.
It's been a minute, and it's been fun. And again, I think going on YouTube has been the best thing. And so, help us continue to grow, because that's we've definitely had, I think, more fun being on YouTube now than just being
a little bit of a learning curve. We're still.
Oh yeah, we still have kinks we have to work out here, but we have a camera now, and we're working on lighting, and just stuff. I brought over some decorations. Maybe they will make an appearance next week. We'll see. Depends on where we're able to configure.
Yeah, they're pretty cool.
Yeah, the 2 giant swords. It's awesome.
But yeah, no, to your point, I mean, we've been doing this show for over a year now, so kudos to us. A little pat on the back. Yeah. But during that time, we've covered a lot of information.
We have.
And a lot of that was not in our favor. I mean, part of the reason why we even started the show is because we felt like somebody had to say something. Yeah. And it's finally turning back around. Yeah,
it's been a very interesting year culturally because, and again, we wanted to be another voice in the realm of I don't even want to say right wing, but non-woke sort of individuals just talking about things going on culturally.
I like to think of us just as the normies. You know what I mean? We're just
I mean, we're normal guys. I mean, we're not political pundits, right? We're not. We're 2 dads, right? We're husbands, and we're bringing up things that concern us, which in turn a lot of times end up being the concerns of the average American. The average person, not even American, just the average person. Taking care of your family. Making sure all your ducks are in a row, and that you have the most opportunity to your, you can take advantage of.
Yeah, for yourself, for your family, your kids' education, like all those values that, I mean, the rest of the world has always held, to a certain standard up until recently. It seems like.
Yeah, and I think. Another reason why we started this was something that I think a lot of people have gone through was over the last, I guess, 3.5 years or so, a lot of people have gone through a transformation as far as what they think about the institutions that we relied upon, the people that we thought we could trust. And mostly because it is come down to the point where, for a lot of people, right, including us, we were saying this well before, the average person would say it and or believe it. But we were just lied to on multiple fronts about a lot of different things. And again,
and it's okay. You can say that now because Twitter will fact check you. So,
Twitter will fact check the Biden White House.
Yes, right? That's awesome.
Which, And that actually is a good kind of, I think, segue into what you were saying, or kind of circle back to what you were saying, was that there seems to be this shift in a positive direction, over this last year through a lot of negative, right? And I think there's still a lot of hardship to come. But I think it's allowed for people to kind of wake up and see and just question things. You know what I mean?
That's
Just
the thing.
question it.
It's crazy it took this long. I mean, people were losing their jobs and their livelihoods over just their opinion or their stance on basic human rights, or so I thought they were basic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, things down to just one's health and beliefs, but things were being said, things were being forced, employers and the government kind of seemed to overstep, in my opinion, and nobody seemed to care. And it was like, you either get with the program or leave because you're not with the country or the majority. And I think most people, the real majority, just stayed quiet. And so, I mean,
right.
It's nice to finally kind of, to your point, kind of have that voice and kind of come back.
Yeah.
It's sad it took that much to have people wake up.
Yeah. Well, I think it's because people were thrown into a corner of, kind of what you were saying, you need to just go along to get along, or else you're going to be ostracized. You're going to lose your job.
Yeah.
You're going to lose this. And
well, they went that severe because they wanted people to sit down and shut up.
Right, and just comply. It was sit down.
When one person stands up, it's easy to, put a black bag over their head and get them out of the way before the rest of the people are like, wait, what was that? What were they trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
What we needed was everybody to kind of step up at once and say enough's enough. But because of the delicacy of the nature of the situation, I mean, it was people's health. It's people's lives. So it's kind of one of those things like, okay, well, so long as it's about others, I'll just stay quiet because it's not really changing my life too much, until the point where we were so in our own hole that we didn't know how to get out because we receded so much ground. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's where you're finding that people had to be really put into a corner before they were willing to accept that the way they perceived reality wasn't the case. And I think you're seeing that by, right now, a lot of early voting is happening in a lot of places, Texas included. And you're seeing it by the different polls that are coming out. I think if you look at when asked for a lot of Americans, what are their top 3 concerns, right? What do they care about? It's all very tangible, concrete issues, that are, again, goes back to, it's what the average person is concerned about, right? Mm-hmm. It's the economy, it's safety, all these kind of things. And that's where you're finding, right, so many of these Republican candidates are starting to really gain ground, is because for a lot of people, they're voting Republican not because they're these, stout conservative type individuals. They're just looking at what's happening around them, and they're like, "Oh my God, the world is like falling apart, and we need to change something immediately."
I think it was Obama. I forget where I saw it. It was either social media, TikTok, or something. It might have even been Ben, and I saw just a clip of him. But I think it was Obama, and he was talking about how voters need to not be selfish right now and vote on, don't just go with Republicans because they're talking about, the price of gas and inflation and everything and the border. We need to focus on real democratic issues like climate change and gun safety in school and like all that stuff. So I think it was Obama. He was even trying to push like, don't do what's best for you. Like what's affecting you in your life now. Don't vote that direction. Mm-hmm. Vote on these bigger issues that don't really affect your life. You know what I mean?
Right.
Not saying that, school shootings or anything like that is anything to joke about or doesn't affect people, but on a larger scale, that's small drop in the pan right now compared to how many people are losing their jobs, how many people can't afford to put groceries and food on their table. Mm-hmm. Winter's coming. Diesel's already going up,
We might be running out of diesel.
I mean, there was that rumor going around too. Like we have to like the 25th of November they were trying to say. Or
something crazy, yeah.
I have a diesel, so there's that.
I'm sure they'll find it somewhere, but it's going to just be expensive. And what's funny about that too is even a few weeks ago, I think it was Nancy Pelosi was on some sort of talk show was saying, and she was saying anytime someone brings up, I think, inflation, she's like, we just need to change the subject. It's like, no, but that's what people care about. Like when you do that, all the person thinks is you're not listening to me. No, they don't care. That's true, right? But it's like you're not listening to me, and they're like, I know, like I know it's really hard to fill groceries and get them, enough to be able to carry your family.
What's best for America.
But what about women's rights? What about the ability to terminate a pregnancy, right? To be for YouTube. What about, like you said? What about climate change? What about we need to focus on racial and climate justice. And people are getting violent crimes up, and I can't fill up my gas tank or I have to pick between filling up my gas tank and getting groceries. No offense, I don't care.
It's getting to the point, and it's almost comical, where it's cheaper almost to eat out, depending on how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Find out which places the kids eat free and on which days. That kind of helps. But it's crazy.
Usually,
like Mondays and Wednesdays,
Mexican restaurants are usually your best bet for kids eat free. Especially Mondays, Wednesdays. There's actually this place. Have you ever been to Chicken Salad Chick, or have you heard of it before?
I've seen a few locations, but I've never been. I don't like chicken salad. The wife does.
I'm not a huge chicken salad fan. It's worth it. It's quite good, and kids eat free on Mondays.
Okay.
So you can get out of there spending I don't know, $18-20.
That's
right?
not too bad.
Yeah. Well, that's a steal.
I know, especially saying something since even Chick-fil-A now, I can't.
Oh, you're going to walk out there spending
2 or 3 people,
$40-$45.
Yeah, not even the whole family. 2 people, you're at $28-$30.
Yeah.
And that's with us getting one drink to share kind of thing.
A medium
we'll get
CT.
2 large fries, we'll pour it in the middle, It's that's not everybody getting.
I eat most of them, but we poured it in the middle.
Exactly. Community.
We share the wealth, right? There's socialism for you. No, but what's funny about all these dominoes really coming to or falling down over this year, right? Because there's no doubt that the Biden presidency has been an utter disaster. I don't care who you are. If you look objectively, it's just been a disaster. This has been one thing after another of things just getting worse. And what's so interesting about that veil falling has really come to fruition with Elon finally acquiring Twitter.
Oh, man.
Okay. And Elon acquiring Twitter has had a domino effect into unveiling, I would say, the most consequential story, I would say, of our lifetime, but it's probably not going to be talked about. It's probably one of the most important stories in U.S. history, right?
What's that?
And it's going to be the Intercept article. I don't know if you can pull it up on there real fast. So the Intercept ran an article. It's called, I think it was called Truth Cops. I think is the title of the article. You can look it up. But here's what it found, right? Because it's a long, long article with a lot of documents and text messages, all this kind of stuff. So I pulled out some stuff just to some bullet points to sum up for us and for our listeners. So from this article, right? So the Intercept dropped hard evidence, which included text messages, documents showing the Biden administration was actively coordinating censorship efforts with Twitter, Facebook, Microsoft, and other big tech companies to manipulate public opinion, to control narratives on racial justice, COVID, and elections. Right? Now, for some of our listeners, right, watchers,
are you serious?
Right?
I had no idea.
Yeah, for us, we're kind of like, yeah,
no
shit. So I understand, for anyone listening, you for who our audience is, you hear that and you're not surprised. Here's why it's important.
There's other people that are going to be like, what?
Yeah, but see, that's why it's important.
Yeah.
And the Intercept, right, is a left leaning news article, right? It's not Breitbart or the Daily Wire or Fox News, right? It's a left leaning publication that is dropped this major thing story that is given hard evidence of it, right? So, yes, if you were paying attention, we saw this was happening, especially when it came to COVID and the election, right? Even still now, right, on YouTube, there are certain things that if you claim, right, which we may or may not believe, listeners may or may not believe, which that's irrelevant, but if you just say them, right, you'll get hard strikes,
like
bans, all that kind of stuff, right? Like, certain things about certain time frames and things that happen, right? All of a sudden,
very specific.
Just things happen. You
Right.
know,
you know what we're talking about. It's like,
yeah, you know what we're saying, right? But you can't, right? So these things that we know were actually happening, right? Because big tech has been going after conservative or right-leaning voices for a long time, right? But the reason why this is important is that, again, it's a left-leaning news publication that is publishing not that it just it's happening, but with hard evidence. You know what I mean? So this was
it's my favorite kind of evidence.
Here's why it's also important, is that whenever they were brought to task about this, right, they were, these big tech companies, right, they were brought to Senate hearings, right, where they were yelled at by Ted Cruz, right, getting finger wagged, right, Jack Dorsey, Mark Zuckerberg, well, you guys need you better not be doing this, all this silly theatrical crap, right? But it made me think of, and I've talked about this before, is Tim Pool went on Joe Rogan's podcast back, this is like 2018. So this is like, what is that, like 5-6 years ago now? Something like that, yeah.
Math.
Whatever. It was like 5 years ago. Where he had Vijay Gadde, right? The former head of legal at Twitter. No longer.
Is that the one that was like crying?
Yes.
And, like quit? Yeah.
No, she didn't quit. Elon fired her. It was awesome.
Even better.
He fired her, the CFO, and the CEO like the first minute he took acquisition. Best. It was fantastic. So Vijay Gadde and Jack Dorsey were on this show, and they were talking about how they are not doing this, right? They're not trying to censor.
I got to stop you for a second. You know what I just thought of?
What?
What would have been funnier than Elon buying Twitter would have been Trump.
Oh, that would have been glorious.
Say what you want. Say if he didn't have the money, he's always going bankrupt, and his money is whatever. Just from a humor standpoint, because he was on The Apprentice or whatever, right?
Right.
So he was like known for "you're fired."
But he didn't fire anybody when he was president. It was so annoying.
There's one person he should have, and well, anyways,
we'll get to him. We'll get to him soon enough.
It's just funny. Can you imagine if you're going to ban me? You're going to ban me.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm buying all of you. And he walks in. He's like,
"You're fired.
I'm going to bring a sink. Let that sink in." And he's like, "You're fired. You're fired."
Yeah.
Like it'd have been.
Elon's bringing the sink in was dude. He's so funny.
The media was like, "Oh,
that's so stupid." It's like
stupid puns and blah blah blah. Have you met Elon? I mean, the dude's just a big nerd with
they're
money.
so butthurt about it. It's just so glorious. So, but Vijay Gadde and Jack Dorsey were on this show, right? And Tim was putting the hammer down on them because he was just speaking the truth. And again, they were just deny. No, we're not doing this. Or no, like, we'll have to look into that, right? Like, we're not trying to censor conservative voices, blah, blah, right? Now they were, but that's irrelevant, right? Because
isn't all that stuff under oath? Like, is there any consequence to like, what is that? What's the term? Perjury? Where you're like lying under oath?
Yeah, but I mean, again, our legal system is a joke now.
Yeah, there's like loopholes. Well, technically,
we will not see, right? We will not see a Jack Dorsey behind bars. You won't see a Mark Zuckerberg behind bars. You won't see a Hillary Clinton behind bars. Like all these kind of silly things, right? Where
but if you go to a PTA meeting,
right, you will be labeled a terrorist, and the FBI
an extremist
will come and break down your door
because you don't want your kid reading those silly books.
Yeah, those books aren't there. That's not happening. So here's what was probably the most substantial thing that was found from this article, which this like again. We saw that, when we hear these kind of things about government collusion with big tech, for a lot of us, we're like, not surprised. What did surprise me was how intimate the collusion was from this article, right? These are three things I had to talk about. So number one was Facebook and Twitter created special portals for government to rapidly request takedowns of content, right? So Facebook and Twitter gave special access to the U.S. government through, I believe that it's specifically DHS, right, to be able to come on in the back end, right, and have a pipeline to make sure that they could get things taken down faster, right, by that immediate access. Insane. That is insane.
I mean, you
to
want
me.
to talk about government overreach and censorship, freedom of speech, the whole nine. That's wild. That's like 1984.
Yes,
like
that's a 1984
Fahrenheit
Brave New World,
451 kind of
shit.
stuff.
Like, that is insane. We're talking about that the U.S. government just has a back end door, right, into Facebook and Twitter.
into private companies
Yes,
to censor individuals.
yes. Well, censor Americans who have this thing called, the First Amendment, right? Freedom of speech, freedom of expression, all that kind of stuff.
Now,
right? And the
I guess
ability
there's
to
an
shut that
argument
down.
of whether they're in a public town square, on a Apple box, preaching, versus, on a private app that they've signed some user agreement that changes all the time and nobody reads.
Right, but see, that's where a lot of the argument when it comes to the big tech
Right.
stuff is really kind of coming to a fruition, because, and this is why the argument should be made. The argument has been made, and I think I tend to agree with, is that they just need to be turned into public utilities, right? Like, the phone, right? Like your cell phone, right? It's a public utility, right? Although there's private companies, AT&T, Verizon, which Verizon was also caught in this, this little shenanigan, which is really super creepy, right?
That's weird.
But, making them a public utilities would solve every issue, right? You just say, like, anybody can use it, right? But maybe you have to have, pay $5 a month, $10 a month to be able to access it, right? But anyone can use it and you can do whatever, right? It's just like a cell phone, right? It's like a phone call, right? Although, they are listening in, but you can say whatever.
We're getting a caller right now.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
What's up, Fed
can
boys?
yeah,
No,
right, exactly.
No, to that I would say it sounds like it's going to be more taxes, but I mean, I'd rather my taxes go to that than foreign countries anyways. So
right,
just
but
take
again,
what we already gave
would,
you and then fix the cell towers of that, because somebody's going to need to maintain it. If it's going to be the government, it's never going to be as streamlined as a private corporation.
Well, of course, absolutely not. But it is a way to I think, free up the, whether it's, and turn them into true town squares like they should be. And what bothers me the most about it is a lot of times their argument is, well, we have to adjust our standards to be a global platform, right? Which is, they're out a lot of times for censoring people, because in other countries, right, they don't have freedom of speech enshrined into their constitutions or whatever it is that they have as countries, right? And so, that's why even like on Twitter, right, you'll say, like, you'll get emails saying your tweet is banned in Saudi Arabia or Germany or whatever because it violates their speech code or whatever. And it's
That's like calling like Hong Kong like separate from China, right?
yeah, it's like saying Hong Kong it should be a separate country from China. It's like saying Taiwan is a separate country from China.
From China.
Right? Because they have sovereignty, and honestly, the Communist Party of China can go screw themselves.
Fair enough. That's a fair point.
That's just my personal opinion, though.
Yep.
So that part was very, very alarming, right? But then you had, again, email and documents showing close collaboration between DHS and the private sector, right? Like you had, again, Vijay Gadde, right, head of legal at a private big tech company, meeting monthly with DHS to discuss censorship plans.
What was their incentive to work with the government? Makes you wonder. As a private company, was the government paying them?
Oh, I would probably say yeah.
I mean, we already found out that apparently Twitter wasn't really making a profit, so maybe that's a good reason to reach out and get your pockets lined. I mean, and if you could tie money to that, like the government giving money to, then there would be an issue. But them just working together in a partnership, other than making the American public possibly mad, I don't know if they were really doing anything wrong.
I think that there are a lot of things that, again, we will continue to find out about the uncomfortably close relationship between big tech and our government.
But that's the problem with big tech, because most of it's Silicon Valley based, and a lot of them are leftist. So a lot of them, they think I'm going to use my power to further the cause. So I don't necessarily need to take money.
That's a lot of what it is. I think too is that ideologic.
You think Bill Gates needs money?
Driven? No,
he's more goal oriented than money oriented. Dude's got money.
Well, what's funny is I remember there was a point where he said he was going to give away a large substantial amount of his wealth to charities and things like that.
Yeah, where did that
conversation go? Ever since then, he's just gotten more and more wealthy. So I'm not sure. But what was also really alarming was you had a Microsoft executive, Matt Masterson, right, who said platforms have to platforms have got to get comfortable with government. It's really interesting how hesitant some remain, right? And this was texted to Jen Easterling, a DHS, the DHS director in February, and Matt, the Microsoft executive, Matt Masterson, is a former DHS executive or official. And that's the other creepy part is when you look at the leadership
it's just
of
like
these,
a spider web.
Yes, if you look at a lot of these big tech companies, they have former Obama White House people that work for them. And it's the same thing with the media, right? It's like they just go back and forth.
It's like Jen Psaki and all of them.
They just go back and forth.
They go into the private sector where if they're press secretaries, guess what? They go back into journalism and they're leading the leftist articles. If they
she has a show on CNN or I think right now.
Yeah,
or
if
one
you're
of
like
them.
Fauci or whatever, then you go back into doing who knows what in the cobwebs, dark spaces of big pharma. I mean, it's all about lobbying and politicians and everything else. And
right.
when you have full control of everything, as well as social media, then what's the American people going to do?
Right. And see, that is, I think the last, and that's why I wanted to make sure I got that last quote, because that was the most eye-opening thing, and really the core of the issue when it comes to this sort of stuff is that the collusion between the private sector of especially big tech, but in a lot of large corporations, right? You could say that across the board, is their collusion with the government, right? Has really created this a quasi. It's this quasi communistic sort of socialistic arrangement that's happening, right? Because if you look at, especially the last couple of years, right, the transfer of wealth to the ultra wealthy, right, through inflation, all these different things that happened during COVID were, historic.
That's the other thing. It's like all these ad campaigns that are running right now. It's like, vote Democrat because we don't want the rich to get richer. It's like that's the opposite.
Oh yeah, billionaires have made, trillions of dollars, right? Large corporations have made trillions of dollars.
Yeah, it's not the little person that's blaming the Republicans for the rich getting richer. It's kind of the opposite.
Right. Well, here's the reality: is there has been a shift where the Democratic Party has become the party of the ultra wealthy, right? The army
hasn't it always been?
I would say yeah. I would say maybe there was a time where you had they focus on unions and the working class to a certain extent.
Okay.
Maybe misguidedly, but
it's like FDR
somewhat. But even FDR was anyway. Is a lot of issues. But it's very interesting how it's had that kind of shift, because there was a time, right, where the Republican Party was seen as the party for the wealthy, the business people, which I think it still sort of is, because a lot of the focus is lowering taxes, especially corporations, things like that, which I think are good to a certain extent, because that keeps corporations here in the United States, right? Which means that it creates more job opportunity for Americans, which is who I care about creating jobs for the most. No offense to anyone at other countries. I hope they find opportunity. But at the end of the day, we can only worry about our country and what's happening here, right? So that's why, again, during the Trump administration, the tax cuts that he provided allowed for companies to grow and thrive and end up paying their employees a lot more, right? And then even in some cases, allowing them to have 4-day work weeks and all these kind of things. People, which is really funny, it was things that the left had been screaming about for so long that were brought about not by force by legal, right, by lawfare. It came about from the free market, creating the opportunity and the ability to say, hey, we can pay you more. Hey, you know what? Everything's going so well. We're actually going to say you don't have to show. You can, we're going to do 4-day work weeks every once in a while, right? Like, it's just funny, right? There's so many of the things that the left cried about, right?
Well, it's like when Biden got into office and he redid the Insulin Act or whatever that Trump did. So the prices went back up, and then he was going to try to work back into that Obamacare plan or whatever, and then get it down that way because he wanted to take credit for it.
Right.
It's something that the left was already saying that they were going to do, but he wanted to undo something Trump did because it was a Trump act and put his name on it.
Right.
It really wasn't for the good of the people.
No, it wasn't. And
that's going to be the downfall of the left, is that they feel like the American people are going to give and forget. They're like, oh, Biden lowered insulin. They're going to forget that, Trump did it first and that Biden undid it and then redid it. That's what the left honestly thinks, is that the attention span for the American people. I mean, is that really how they view the American people? Because based on their actions, it seems so.
Here's what's funny. To be fair, they're not wrong, because I do think that a lot of times the American public's attention span is very much like really quick.
I would say on certain things, but on big issues, I think not.
Well, I think
anybody who cares gives.
Well, I think in this particular instance, they can't. The average person can't escape these issues, right? Because it hits you so close to home. I think that's what it really is. Is that?
Well, that's like the Fauci thing. I'm gonna at least say that is. Fauci came on, I forget where, the other day, and was saying, well, actually, I never said to shut down. And then somebody on TikTok, and anybody can do it. I mean, this is just one person that did something on social media, did a collab of all the times he was, well, I encourage that we should, shut down immediately and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so he's hiding behind these words. It's like a word game. Well, I actually never shut down. But you were encouraging.
I didn't do it. It's like, yeah, but people did it because of what you said.
Yeah, there's like 20 examples of you talking about shut down and how long or when you should do it and how you encourage it.
And also, once we were shut down, there were plenty of times you were saying, we cannot open back up. We should never open back up, right? We should just stay in your homes forever. Put your mask on, you sheep.
Wet in the shower.
Wear it while you swim, while you drive.
Oh, man, there's pictures of them at the beach. Like, just people at the beach and in the pool wearing a mask. Like, those are the ones that I worry about, because those are the ones that are driving next to you and your family on the road. You know what I mean?
But what I put that to is just, again, COVID broke people's brains. And honestly, this kind of goes into, I think, like the next part of what we wanted to talk about. Was this article, and we're just going to go because I could, like, so many, when I think about the last couple of years, right, COVID, and not really just the way COVID was handled has shaped the way America functions forever. In some ways, I think maybe kind of weirdly positively, because it's opened up opportunities for like things like work at home, where people can potentially spend more time with their family, which I think is good, because I think the nuclear family is the quintessential unit, right, on planet Earth, right? We talk about the family, so I think that's good. But I think number one, people's mental health has just been just demolished.
Yeah, mental health for people
isn't a bad. We're in
a bad place. However, I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this. Mental health has been a crutch for a lot of people
Oh,
in a lot of organizations and companies to push more pills and everything else. It's who's the one that Andrew Tate's really big on it.
Uh-oh.
I'm not even a big Tate fan. I mean, I watch and I keep up with certain things, but I'm not like Andrew Tate, you know. So take that for what you will. But one of his things I noticed that he pushes a lot in a lot of the clips that pop up is he doesn't believe mental health is like an illness.
Mm-hmm.
He thinks it's like a symptom. You know what I mean? He doesn't think it's something that just needs to be pilled up and pushed on. And that's what's really great about, you know, depending on which doctors you go to. Some doctors they get schooled in how to mask symptoms and treat it with prescriptions, and others are more like, what's the word? Like not homeopathic, but like holistic medicine. Yeah. I was going to say hallucinogenic or whatever, but but no, I mean, there's different ways to go about it. And I think that the current generation, this current, you know, young youth, everybody thinks that they're depressed. Everybody thinks that they have some kind of mental illness to the point where it's like, you can't say that, you're going to trigger somebody, it's just enabled an entire generation that now you can't say or do anything without fear or repercussion that you're going to upset somebody's feelings or emotions or opinion. And then they hide behind, you know, if you stand up.
It's the same thing with the gender ideology, right? You watch that skyrocket.
But they're all connected.
It is, right? Because it's this,
So let's just say it starts with a gender thing. And then you have a real conversation about it where you're like, well, I disagree with you. This, and this. Suddenly then their feelings get hurt and then they get emotional. Like that woman at Walmart, that got triggered. And she's like, I was recently, you know.
Oh, yeah. She's a psycho. Yeah. She's
and he's like, I'm just trying to say that you cut me in line. Don't come near me.
And he's like, what is wrong with you? Right? Because it's like, you're a psychopath. Like, you need help.
But is she really? That's the thing. Is like, she could be playing that card because she knows it's going to work for her.
I think, but the thing is, I do think it's almost, what is that called? Like when you like
a placebo, like a fake diagnosis.
Yeah, like when you take on there's a term.
It's called acting. That's what it is.
No, but
people.
it's like there's like a term where when you take on symptoms from.
Okay, people. What it is it's called a tantrum. And it was kids who wasn't spanked enough, you know what I mean? And they've got away with a whole lot, and suddenly it doesn't go their way, and they just have a public freak out. And nobody was there to rear their child.
That is part of it, certainly. But I do think there is this aspect where people's I'll say
so
this.
Mental health for me, just to clarify, is a real thing. There are people who suffer from it. Like postpartum depression, for example, is a real thing, and it needs to be watched out for. My wife just went through it. This is our third kid. I mean, there's symptoms and there's real things you got to look out for. There's people who are clinically depressed and they may need help. It doesn't mean you just mask them up with pills, but my wife's probably cringing the way I say pills, but
pills?
Yeah. I'm Southern, whatever. But so in my defense, there are real examples, and I feel like the over diagnosis of people with mental illness is overshadowing the people who really do have these issues. But it's not as widespread as the media or anybody else are making it seem.
I think, yes. However, I do think the isolation from like COVID and things like that did actually affect, because we are not meant to be in isolation away from other human beings for long periods of time. That's not the way our as a species,
you're correct.
Yeah.
As a traditional masculine male, I would say that I differ from that category, and Montana sounds really nice right about now.
Oh yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong.
I don't need people.
I would be more than happy to go out to Wyoming and buy a couple acres for about $35,000 and have no one to bother me.
But to your point, there's a reason why prisoners don't like solitary confinement.
That's why solitary confinement exists.
It is a punishment for a reason.
Yeah, because and again, I'm pointing this out. I know you're joking about the Montana thing, but here's what it is that you have these people, right? That were in a lot of times these large cities, right, living in their cubicle, right, by themselves, right, and they were told by Dr. Fauci, right, and all these other experts, You need to stay home, stay away from other people, right? And after, a week, 2 weeks, a month, or whatever of doing that, your brain is going to malfunction because that's not normal. That's not how we're supposed to be. And there has been irreversible damage done by the way COVID was handled. Not because of COVID, right? Which, the fact that it still has some sort of hold on us.
Flu shots are back this year.
Whatever. Where
did it go the last?
I have no
jokes
words.
aside.
So here's why we're bringing this up is there was this article in the Atlantic, okay, that said what was the title? That's all we needed. Bring it up real quick. So the title from the Atlantic is, this was from Emily Oster, I think was her name, was this: "Let's declare a pandemic amnesty." Right? We need to forgive one another for what we did and said when we were in the dark about COVID. And what is so disgusting about this article was this Emily Oster, is trying to put it in the perspective of, we didn't know about COVID. And so she's talking about how we treated it, April, May of 2020.
No, they chose to be in the dark. Depending on where you got your information, there was people.
Some chose, but she's trying to make it seem, she's trying to bring us back to like March and April of 2020, when truly, honestly, most people did not know what was going on. Right? We didn't have a lot of information, but by May and June, it was very clear how to handle it. And what was the case? It was very clear. It was very clear that it was something that we could not stop. We needed to go outside. We needed to live our normal lives. At the time, there was thought we need to protect the vulnerable. Well, that was right. But then we're going to get a vaccine, right? They're going to work on it and get it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the part that people are angry about. That's not the part that people lost their jobs. Mm-hmm. That's not the part that people lost their businesses. That's not the part where people had to watch their loved one die on FaceTime and not next to them.
Yeah.
Right? That's not the part that ruined people's lives. That was in the late summer. That was in 2021. That is the part where they're trying to backtrack and say, hey, we didn't know, right? Remember? It's like, no. There is no
We're
forgiveness.
Almost in 2023 now.
Yeah, we're almost 2023. There are people that are still wearing masks, still talking about this, right? And when I saw this, I was disgusted.
There's still commercials about getting boosted.
Oh yeah, get your booster, right? Absolutely. It's like we want to go back out.
That's like a movie, and it's 6 weeks of screenings, and they're trying to get every last little penny they can before it gets pulled from theaters.
Yeah. The audacity and the gall of these people, right, to come and look at you in the face. I mean,
even from the government,
right?
It's going to be a dark winter,
right? Yeah, right. Like, it's going to be a full of death and despair or whatever.
It was every direction, and there was no excuse. I mean, one side completely ostracized the other,
mm-hmm.
and now they're just like, well, we didn't mean it. It was tense.
It's not just ostracized. You lost your job.
Yeah.
Right? Your family didn't let you come over for holidays.
Oh,
right?
That's another good point. Tearing families apart.
Families were broken apart because of this.
Honestly, though, if that broke your family, then maybe that was a Band-Aid that needed to be ripped off.
Potentially, right? There may have been other stuff underlying that, but this ruined people's lives. And now they want to go back and say, yeah, we didn't know, right? We didn't know. It's like, no. There is no forgiveness for this, right? And I saw this was really, I saw this, and I think it's a good point. This is on our friend Allie at The Real Femme Sapien on YouTube. Go check her out if you don't already. You might. She had posted this on her story, and it was about this article, and it was about from a Christian perspective, like how do we handle this, right? And I do we forgive? And I think, right, when it comes to your friends and family, right? You probably should try to find a way to reconcile, right? You should try to find a way to reconcile with your family. Astros are up. Yes.
2-1.
You need to find a way to reconcile, right? Because it's your family, it's your friends, right? If you had a long relationship, right, it's probably worth saving. But as far as forgiveness for, I would say, not the NPCs of the left, right?
People forget the internet is forever.
Well, the
The amount of people that were tweeting out and the things they were saying.
You're a grandma killer, right? You're like, anti-vaxxer.
If you don't get it, then you deserve to die.
Yeah,
like
you
all
deserve-
kinds
well,
of
yeah. There was articles.
people
saying,
were wishing death on other people just because they didn't get something to prevent their own death because they were so worried about like, well, if you don't get it, then I'm at risk. That's not how vaccines work.
Correct, but also it's like I always remember the LA Times article. This is after this Republican figure around LA passed away, right? And I guess she wasn't vaccinated. I think she died from COVID, right? And they said,
But how many comorbidities does she have?
Yeah,
irrelevant,
right? Well, so and the article from the LA Times was, making fun or mocking anti-vaxxer deaths is ghoulish but necessary, right? That's the kind of stuff that was being written. That's the kind of attitude that was being written. Again, you had people in blue states losing their jobs as they were in government.
Like Nazi propaganda justifying what they were doing to the Jewish people.
Right.
I'm not trying to compare it to something as extreme.
Sure, but it's the same. It's in the same
mindset, the same principle.
Thinking,
like,
right.
Now, granted, the one was horrible, but the mindset, like, they want to be forgiven, like like German soldiers who were doing something,
or they were. I was just following orders. Right?
Yes,
we're not doing that. Right, we're not doing that. Right, just like when I've said in the past, like the Blue Lives Matter movement has become pointless now. Right, not to say there aren't good police officers out there, because there are, but the Blue Lives Matter in general makes no difference, because I watch videos of cops arresting and people for running their business, for sitting in a restaurant wanting to get served but they weren't vaccinated. Right, I saw cops doing that. That's a bunch of bullshit. Right, that's why the Blue Lives Matter thing. Look, sorry, I can't get behind you. The good cops out there, love you, thank you for what you do. But a blanket,
that's why a lot of them left the force.
Yes, exactly.
And that's why you're seeing ads trying to get hired now.
Right. So we're not doing that, right? And that's why you saw the New York Supreme Court, right, ruled in favor, right, of the state employees who were fired for not getting the vaccine, who are also getting back pay, thankfully for that, right? But and thank God that they stood strong, right? And this is where one of the biggest things that was so important, and this is what, and we're going to continue to see this come to fruition. Candace Owens was big about talking about this. Was don't quit your job, make them fire you, right? Because at the end of the day, it's going to come back where you can go and take legal action against them, right? That was proven this, and just seeing that in New York, I hopefully will have a ripple effect where we're seeing things like with the two people from Kroger. Did you see that? No. What is it? What
so happened? I guess they were supposed to wear like aprons or pins on their work clothes that had some kind of pride flag on it, and two employees who work for Kroger, the grocery store chain, basically refused, and they got let go. And now they just won in court, saying that went against their beliefs and rights, and they each got paid $70 million.
Good. Screw Kroger.
It's one thing for Kroger to support something like that, but to force employees who don't have the same beliefs, I mean, that's un-American.
No, absolutely. And that's where it's like, we're going to, I hopefully the ripple effect from New York will also go to places like Methodist Hospital, right? We're here in Houston, large hospital chain, which we talked about before, fired thousands of nurses because they didn't, or I don't know if it's thousands, but a lot of nurses because they didn't want to get vaccinated. Right, they didn't want to do go through the vaccine, right, and they were being forced to, right, and I hope that they're able to kind of bring that back up in legal act. I know they tried to take it to them, right, and it didn't work, but hopefully with New York that sets a precedent, right?
Yeah, I still got family who are employed over there, and it's funny still having conversations with them because the ones that are left, clearly have a certain mindset. And when you talk to the family individual, it's clear that they've been swayed one direction. And when you start having a conversation with them and you ask certain questions or bring up certain facts, I mean, it's easy to change their mind because when they're presented with that, but they're so under the knife all the time that basically what Methodists did is they cleansed the herd of anybody had a different opinion than them. And which is crazy because that's the last place you'd ever think it would happen is in the medical field. I mean, common sense is one thing, but like medical education, you think would tell you that, okay, this is not how this works. This is not how this spreads. This is not how this PPE, works, how this mask and prevents transmission.
It was just comply. It was just get in line.
Get in line and show up. Yep.
The CDC had taken control, right? Where doctors were at one. It's so funny because there have been times where doctors were talking about how, never before had the CDC had such a stranglehold at what doctors were doing, right? The CDC was treated as it should be, a government entity that doesn't know what they're talking about, where they send the recommendations and doctors are like, okay, whatever. Like, I'm not going to
wash your hands for 2 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. That's like, whatever. Sure. Okay. And where the CDC is dictating what doctors must do. And what is so funny about this is two things are happening. Number one, the data on the initial Pfizer trial was released, and all I'll say about this, right, for YouTube purposes, is that we were lied to about the efficacy, right? Where even you had someone like Ben Shapiro, who was a major, what's the word I'm thinking of? He was a major. He was a driving force for the vaccine, right? He thought it was good. He said you should get it. You should get it. You should get it. Right? Ben said that a lot. Recently, on one of his shows, he talked about how if he knew now if he knew then what he knows now, would he have gotten the vaccine? And he said, I don't know. Probably not.
Yeah.
Which for someone who was such a huge advocate for it, to have that turn. Now, granted, I always thought he was wrong on that point because
you're anti-vax. We know. I'm just kidding.
I
just let my newborn get Hep B. You know what I mean? I'm not anti-vax. I'm just common sense forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
there are things that are tested, and there's things that are tried and true, and there's things that are forced, and you're just like, wait, hold up a minute. You want me to jump off what cliff just because there's 500 other people doing it?
Well, here's what's been the most interesting thing.
What's at the bottom of that cliff? Water or rocks? No, I'm okay.
Spikes? Oh yeah, I'm done. I would say that what's so funny ultimately about the whole push for the COVID.
Never mind. I'll tell you in a second.
Okay. What's been the funniest thing is that it's kind of woken people up to question kind of everything about medicine. Like for me, I'll say for myself personally, where I before pre-COVID would have trusted any doctor for whatever it is the recommendation was, pretty much. To a certain extent, I've always felt uneasy about medical professionals because of how a lot of them view the issue of termination of pregnancy. I've always had a hard time trusting doctors anyway.
Well, I mean, it used to be a thing where you were encouraged to get a second opinion. Don't just believe the first doctor. Go to it.
Well, that's certainly true. But now, with what happened through 2020, with COVID and everything else, I really have a hard time trusting any doctor on anything that they say, because it seems to me that a lot of them are really not. They really don't quite know what they're talking about. And I'm not saying that doctors aren't smart, but it is very clear how big pharma has such a heavy influence on how doctors are educated. I think that's kind of something you said.
Yeah.
To where they aren't really taught to treat the actual disease per se, but how to just medicated enough to make it sort of go
How
away.
to mask it, yeah.
Which isn't really health. And what's also happened is people question a lot more different things like, especially when it comes to children, especially because the COVID jab has been so heavily pushed on children, it's made people really question.
Which never really made sense to me, because the one thing we knew all along is that it wasn't really an issue for kids.
Children were the least vulnerable.
Exposed, or yeah.
But what I guess the only thing I'll say on this is that people are questioning other things that their children are expected or encouraged to do when it comes to vaccine schedules and things like that. And I'll leave it at that. And I think that's worth, as a parent, taking time to see if some things make sense and maybe some things don't.
Fair enough.
Again, it's up to the parent.
Have you seen that schedule?
Have I seen that it's increased dramatically since the 60s? Yes. And
I saw a poster at Kelsey.
It's
of like the 1 week, 2 week, 2 month, 6 month, and it's just like
quite alarming.
Yeah.
The increase, and I would say I probably would save my opinion on it for not this. You and I could talk about it, a different
So
time.
basically, just do your own research and figure out if that's good for you and your family.
Yeah, take your time, do research, and figure out what makes sense for you and your family, and that's what I would say on that. I would say one thing I did see that was very interesting is that Candace Owens on Parler has a podcast series that's like on the Parler platform exclusively. When it comes to vaccinations, I think it's interesting and maybe worth watching and coming to your own conclusion of what you think on that. So ultimately, right, to kind of wrap this up, because we're just over the hour mark. What is just, again, for some of this stuff, for some of our listeners, it's not really that surprising.
Mm-hmm.
These things are things that we've been kind of screaming about, for 2 or 3 years, right? When it comes to the censorship stuff, a little bit longer than that. But it's important to know that now that this information is out in black and white when it comes to the censorship stuff, when it comes to the efficacy of certain things, it's important that those things are out. It's important that those things are there because it gives you something else to bring up when talking to friends, family, others that think differently than you perhaps. And if they reject it, it's whatever, right? You can't force someone to accept information. But what this helped me with personally, right? Because I think anyone in our position can feel a lot of times, again, very isolated, feel like no one really thinks the way we do, right? Because we see it on commercials and media that the exact opposite is what you should think, right? So it's very easy to think that you're kind of on
alone,
your own.
yeah.
And these things should give you confidence to know that questioning is a good thing. That kind of also, if something is, if you have a gut feeling about something, you're probably right. Because for me, after a little while, I knew when it came to like the COVID stuff, I had a gut feeling like something wasn't right.
Yeah, it just didn't sit well.
And it's proven to be that my gut feeling was the best thing I could have trusted. Right. And I feel more confident than ever that the way I've handled when it comes to that situation was exactly right. And that's not because I'm some sort of genius. I think a lot of people feel the same way. Mostly just because you should, whenever you have a gut feeling, there's a good shot that you're probably right.
But don't just be somebody who is stuck in their beliefs.
No.
You don't want to be that hypocrite. We're not saying, the left is the left because they're stuck in their ways and they don't listen to reason. The right can be the same way.
Yes, it can.
They can be hard-headed, pig-headed, stubborn, whatever you want to call it.
Don't talk about
We're
me
not
like
the
that.
We're not those type of people, and that's not what the message we try to push. Since the episode 1, what we've encouraged is do your own research, do your own due diligence. We did the very same. We might have even disagreed at times, but it's always at the best interest for ourselves and our families. And during the pandemic, I mean, if you still want to even call it that, but during the, during the pandemic, we'll just settle for
Yeah,
that.
you can just say that.
We were constantly evolving and researching with new information that we had at the time. So there were times where like, okay, shouldn't we get this? Like, okay, let's see, where is it available? Like, okay, who's it affecting now? What are the numbers at? What are the real numbers at? Who's this affecting? Who's being hospitalized? And you kind of start to realize, okay, I'm not really at risk. So then you kind of weigh your options like, okay, am I at risk for side effects that are unknown because this is something that's been pushed through and rushed? Or is this something that, hey, what are my odds of actually getting COVID and getting one, hospitalized for it and or death from it? And when you start to look at it on the kid level, that's kind of when you, as a parent, realize, okay, I encourage grandma to get it. Me, I'm on the fence. I think I get a little bit of time to kind of wait and see and how it goes. My kids, hell no. Like there's no rhyme or reason. And that goes to what you're saying is, do your research, figure out what works for you and what doesn't. Even if it's traditional vaccinations, as you were alluding to a second ago, is like, but that's with everything. Like, with everything. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just what it comes down to is putting value in critical thinking, right? Because like you said, I don't pretend to be an expert in anything at all, but
you don't just believe the magical box on the wall either.
No, I try to say, and also a lot, again, common sense goes a long way. If you hear something and it's like, that doesn't make a lot of sense, then you're probably right.
Yeah, intuition, your gut feeling.
Yeah,
like you were saying, it goes a long way.
There's a good shot that you're probably correct.
Call that the Holy Spirit if you're spiritual, whatever. But there's some voice that's speaking to you, whether it's instinct or what have you. But through survival of the fittest, through nature, as a person, as a lineage, you got this far for a reason. Maybe you should listen to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And ultimately, I hate to say I told you so, but
we told you so.
Yeah, we told you so. And there are a lot of people that are all I know is there are a lot of people right now, I think a couple of years, have regrets.
They just feel asinine,
levels.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of people who probably feel really dumb right now.
Yeah, and here's the biggest thing, right? And this is what's important about.
Where's those celebrities, the loudest and proudest? Where have they been? They've been real quiet.
I hate Hollywood.
Yeah, right.
But here's the biggest thing, is that this is not the time to gloat, right? It's a time to take those people around you, a little bit. But it's the time to take the people around you that you disagree with, whatever, and try to say, hey, look, this is what I was talking about, right? It's right here, right? And try to have the dialogue, because the greatest thing we can do is have conversations to show why what we're talking about makes sense, right? Because that's the best thing we could do, because we're trying to create a better society, a better culture, right?
100%.
And the reality is that we have to live with these people. Right now,
yes,
some of them,
we're stuck with them.
Some of them, right? The blue hairs, whatever, they're nuts.
Yeah, they're gonna.
And you're not, and we're gonna make fun of them, right? We were talking about this with Rebecca. We're gonna make fun of them. They're gonna be memes. It's gonna be funny, right? You should pray.
But
for
they're
them
not gonna be a threat.
You should pray for them because they're very broken and sad people.
Mental illness is real.
Right. But take this opportunity to persuade and show people.
But just
right?
have a conversation, because for once this is an opportunity, because we don't want to be bigots or hypocrites. We preached about being able to have a conversation.
I'll be a bigot, but not a hypocrite.
We preached about being able to have a conversation that wasn't able to be had previously. And now the ball slightly rolled back to our direction of the court. And now we can choose to be the bigger people and have that conversation. To your point, we can choose to be like, instead of, I told you so, like, screw you, mom and dad, or whoever, Uncle Chad, or whatever. Like,
that's a little close to home.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't targeted for anything, but it just came out. But you can choose to be that person Or you can choose to be like, hey, see, like as Christian was saying, this is what I was talking about. That information was there. I was trying to say it, but look, man, you were brainwashed. This isn't new news. It's been there, but now it's just propped up in a different format or a different way, and you're just now hearing about it. It suddenly makes that one person realize that, hey, instead of making them feel like dumb but like angry or feel silly and they push back, maybe they're kind of, it's a learning moment. Maybe they're like, hey, next time maybe I'll ask more questions. Maybe I'll do this. And it brings everybody closer and it closes that divide, because guess what? Even Rogan's saying it. The red wave's coming. So instead of, we need to mend that road.
Yeah, and speaking of that, make sure to go vote. Okay, you got to vote.
That's the biggest part. If you don't vote, then
go vote.
Then
like
hush up,
did,
because I haven't voted
right?
either. I need to go.
Go vote. Right, early voting ends tomorrow.
But then the regular opens up.
Yeah, one day on Tuesday. So you have to go on that day.
I'll figure it out.
Trust me, it'll be a lot less crowded tomorrow.
True.
But yeah, get out and vote.
Don't be me, be you.
Especially if you're in Houston, right? Make sure you get out and vote, right? Make sure you vote for Alexandra Miller so she can beat Lena Hidalgo, because Lena Hidalgo is the worst human being on planet Earth.
The worst?
Well, yeah, because it's local.
Over
so
AOC?
Really, well, yeah, because Lena Hidalgo is like AOC, and she actually affects my life. So
that's a fair point.
So she is worse.
As I often say, local hits you first.
Yes. So therefore, yeah, for our Houston folks, let's kick her out, please. So anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. Right, it's a great show. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, make sure to like, subscribe, share the show with your friends, and we'll see you guys next week for a elections recap. It's gonna be fun. The red wave is coming. Maybe, I think. Who knows? We'll find out.